if you are a fan of defenses, have we got a football team for you to watch? The Eagles' defense is dominant for a second straight week out of the bye, taking down an NFC North playoff contender. And Eric and I are here to break it down. So, welcome into Postgame Live. I'm your host, Shane Haff. Give me a follow on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. Joined also by Eric. Give him a follow on Twitter at Eagles X's and O's. Eric, man, initial thoughts. Just taking a deep breath, stressed out at the end of another game here. Where are you at mentally right now after that one?
Imagine you're a player on the offense and you see the defense just absolutely cooking over there, and you know that you have the number one most amount of money invested in your unit, and you're going against a secondary that's banged up, and you're like, have little to no success. And if you look, they were negative 9.5 EPA total out of Hertz. Just a 35% success rate throwing through the air. And one of the things that was odd was the forecast called for 15-mile-per-hour winds with gusts up to 35. And Jalen Hurts had one of his highest A dots, average depth of target for the year at 13.1. He was throwing floaters like to the intermediate part of the field, and they're getting blown all over, and it made no sense because they had been throwing a lot more underneath when it was pristine weather. And then the defensive side was an absolute masterpiece, reminiscent of the Super Bowl. They didn't, like I thought they were giving up that deep dig over and over, and you could see in the Packers game it was the same thing. But it takes time for that to develop. The pass rush just collapsing in. I mean, it is unbelievable to see the difference between before they got Jalen Phillips and now. He's playing incredible. I'll go ahead and say, like, yeah, I was probably wrong saying a third was a little bit steep. Now it seems like a joke, the way he's playing. So just the tale of two sides. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, man, the pass rush just night and day difference over what it was before the bye. And I was trying to look up the pressure stats, and I don't nothing from Next Gen Stats is up yet, but PFF's initial charting shows that Goff was only under pressure on 31% of his dropbacks, and I think that's not even remotely close. Like that doesn't even seem in the ballpark. Um, it felt like I would say he was kept clean on like 31% of his dropbacks, but last week it was about 50-50 against Jordan Love, and this pass rush came alive. It helps your secondary, and I mean, obviously Quinyon Mitchell played awesome last week. He had a great game again this week, I think. But you even saw Adoree Jackson. He makes a nice pass breakup on third down, and this is a team where I was concerned a little bit about Adoree Jackson coming into it because they do have Jamison Williams. They've got um, Jameer Gibbs. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and of course, obviously, Sam Laporta being out really hurts, but they've got two legitimate boundary weapons. And so I was concerned about some of the matchups you were going to get there, and Goff just couldn't see straight for like the last three quarters of the game. I think they said on the broadcast that he only completed 2 of his final 18 passes in that game. So, I mean, massive shout out to the defense. I want to know personally, I want to know what the record for most batted down passes is in a single game, because it feels like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis probably got close to that record tonight. I mean, it's like Goff would finally get a guy open and the ball just gets batted down. Just total team performance defensively. And, there's a lot of guys that we can shout out, and I'm sure we will, but on the offensive side, like, what an unmitigated disaster. It's your second week in a row out of the bye, just looking like you don't have a clue. Second week in a row out of the bye, you only win because your defense holds opponents to single-digit points. You've put up less than 300 yards in both games. Just pathetic stuff. And there's more to it than the design because the penalties are ridiculous. The amount of penalties that they're just a poorly coached, poorly disciplined football team offensively. You've got AJ Brown just stops running on a one-on-one go ball a week after he was whining all over social media and Twitch and has a meeting with the owner to talk about getting more involved, and you get him in the premium look you want, one-on-one against a backup cornerback, and he just stops running. Like, just awful stuff all the way around offensively. I do wonder how much the wind impacted some of the deep balls because Hurts is traditionally a pretty good deep ball thrower, and he misses Saquon on a deep ball, and you could tell the passes they weren't tight spirals. It just seemed like they kind of died in the air, and Goff had a few of those too. Although I think a lot of Goff's issues were more pressure related. So you do wonder a bit about that, but just a bad performance by the offense, great performance by the defense for the second week in a row, and I don't think this is sustainable. But the Packers and the Lions are two of the biggest contenders in the NFC, and you think about the other two teams that are out there that could, or the other three teams, I guess, that could potentially challenge you. Seattle will fold like a lawn chair if they face the Eagles pass rush. Sam Darnold, I mean, he had an awful game today. He can't do anything against pressure. The Bucks, I just think they're still so beat up. It really, I think, comes down to the Rams. Like, Stafford's really good at mitigating pressure in some things, and so, not putting the cart ahead of the horse, it doesn't feel sustainable. But you start looking down matchups and you say, man, if the Eagles can get after a quarterback like this, maybe it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, and like getting to the offense, the one thing that stuck out like a sore thumb is how many snaps these backup tight ends are playing. And you can get into the whole game of look at their EPA and 12 personnel passing, but then their pass rate's like 30 something percent. And when they run out of it, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And Calcaterra, they're having him have key blocks. Like the success of the play is depending on him when he's like trying to kick out an end coming across, or there was one play where he's flexed and then inserts like into the B gap, misses two guys who then just stonewall Saquon. He's the worst blocker in the NFL. I'm not kidding. Like,
And he played 34 snaps tonight.
and that's just adding to his league run blocks. He's been in more snaps in run blocks than any other tight end in the NFL over the last two seasons, and he can't do it.
Do you,
So,
do you want to guess out of his 34 snaps how many routes he ran?
10?
4. He was on the field 30 snaps as a blocker and 4 snaps running routes. Like,
That's
I have
90
never
10. That's 90-10 split.
Yeah, I've never seen a team more dedicated to putting bad football players on the field.
Well, if you have like a defensive assistant in the booth and he's going, hey, Kelvin, every single time they put Calcaterra in, it's 89% of the time it's a run. All right, get the linebackers in and just flow downhill. It's unbelievable how they're telegraphing what they're doing. They come out in that stupid okay, the fullback type, that's a fine play. It's a gimmicky thing it's an unscouted look. That's how it works. Andy Reid, he'll have these gimmicky plays that are unscouted and they can work in a one sample size. Maybe you use it 8 weeks later. But to run it back the very next week and the Lions are all over it, it's really comical. Now, I wanted to go through this really quickly, that there was 10 concepts I'd run against the Lions defense. I put this thread on Twitter. And so he got weak side swing pass to Saquon. They ran a swing pass to Saquon. Mesh against press man. They ran mesh. Rub route fade to Devontae. I don't recall them doing that. They ran a tunnel screen, but they had the holding on that. QB lead versus their amoeba front. They did that to success. Under center misdirection run. That was like their first play of the game and their second run of the game as well. Devontae condensed isolated alignment running a whip route. They didn't do that unless it shows up on all 22. Sideline fade to AJ. I don't recall, unless you're going to call that one where he jogged a sideline fade. And then same shotgun crack toss. They ran a fake and then a flip toss over to Saquon, kind of naked out there. So they ran quite a few of the concepts to some success. And like you had mentioned earlier, the amount of times they shot themselves in the foot, it's just maddening. Like for a team where their core principles is like avoid the negative plays, make sure you control what you can control, the things that take no talent. They're well below average in that department. So where's the disconnect? Like if they're actually prioritizing it and they're clearly poor at it, what's happening there? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know where to go with the offense. Like I think the biggest positive for me in this game is that they got an empty and they ran with Hurts a few times, because I've been begging for that. Like it's such an easy button, especially when your offense is just struggling so much. And I really wanted them to do that on that final drive when they had the 3rd and 3 before the penalty. It's just like just go empty and spread them out, and you can take your slant look if you like one, or you can just run it. And so I liked that they showed a little bit of a willingness to run with Hurts, but um, the offense just doesn't execute well enough. Even the things that are good design, they don't execute well enough. Jordan Mailata, it seems like he has a dumb penalty every week now. Lane Johnson, we maybe are in the snake bitten season where he's just going to leave every game with an injury. Cam Jurgens leaves with an injury. Like the only consistent guy that you have on the offensive line is Tyler Steen. Who would have thought that? The guy that's actually staying on the field, not committing penalties. And, so the offensive line has struggled. I still think Saquon's played awesome. I thought he had some really good, like, 2-yard runs in this game that should have been losses that, the impressive 2-yard run varieties. But I was curious. I want to ask you. So the Eagles, now down near the end of the game, they go for the tush push on 3rd and 1, and they don't get it, and so they lined up and they pushed it again. I want to hear your thoughts on that. What did you think of that decision?
Yeah,
By the way, here, so full situation. It's 3 minutes left, 4th and inches at your own 29-yard line, up 10.
yeah, I would have tush pushed it.
Okay.
And just to talk about the play calling at large, once again, there's always a caveat that until we watch the all 22, we're not going to put a stamp on it. But I thought it was pretty good. I like you mentioned, the operative word here is execution. It was really bad. The passes fluttering into the wind. I mean, Hurts, he's a great touch thrower. He is not a guy who drives it like with a tight spiral and velocity through the wind. And that actually affected Goff too. Goff has a bit of a candy arm. Like he can throw that frozen rope about 25 yards over the middle on that dig. Beyond that, that thing's gonna have some loft on it. And each team tried like one deep shot the entire game. Um, like they did throw that scramble pass down the sideline, but that was kind of out of structure. But then they just threw the deep one to AJ. So it was a little bit weird that they were like eschewing the deep shots, especially against some of those suspect corners, but then throwing like floaty intermediate passes. I just found that odd because they've thrown to the intermediate, if I recall, less than any other team in the NFL. But this game, they seems like they threw there most of the time.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah, I was with you. I thought I would have gone for the tush push at that point because I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time a team ever stopped the tush push 2 times in a row? And I get that like Brett Toth was in, but it wasn't his first snap. I think it was like the second or third snap he was in, and they've run the tush push with him while Cam Jurgens was out. It's like he's done it. To me that was it's inches and the game is over. So I would have gone for it. So I can understand people being upset with not punting. I mean, it was a 2-score game with 3 minutes left,
But
but
they
I was
needed
all for just putting the nail in the coffin there and going for it.
they needed to do that left tush push. Like on 3rd and 1, they go straight ahead and they get almost nothing. Then there's the one where Mailata and Dickerson, they crash down and then he kind of goes over their backs. I think that's what they needed there. I had no problem with the call at all. Um, it came, and once again, it came down to execution.
We
It,
did get
yeah,
some key intel, and that is if we meet the Lions in the playoffs, don't run a tush push. I wouldn't do it again. Like in the playoffs, third and one, at third and goal from the one, I'm probably going to something else at this point because they kind of showed me tonight they can stop it. It was, well, I was gonna look and see how many QB sneaks, how many they ran. Oh well, they had the penalty on the one. Is that the
like
only two tush
four?
pushes they ran? No, they
No,
ran
no,
another.
no. They had a successful tush push for a touchdown, right?
Yeah, that's right. So they ran it once and got the touchdown, and then they got the false start that wasn't a false start, and then they got the stopped back to back times. Oh no, and then a false start that was a false start. So they lined up in it 5 times, got
Yes,
penalized
yes.
twice, got it once, and then failed twice
I
in a
mean,
row.
Darius Cooper, that is a brutal, brutal penalty. And here's my speculation. They were going to go on one. Then Hertz made Tundra, T number two. Like, presumably he changed the count there. And then he goes on one because he's a rookie. But the odd part is, I don't think he's in. Like, I wonder what percentage of tush pushes Darius Cooper's been in. It's odd that he was in potentially.
He
But yeah, that
played
was
3 snaps in this game.
yeah, that's brutal.
I'm not sure if they chart that one as a snap. It wasn't technically a snap, so I guess maybe that was his 4th snap.
I would have liked to see more Bigsby. I think one of the reasons we didn't is because they would keep getting in like 2nd and 18s, shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Like they don't even have enough opportunities to try to like distribute the ball around. Uh, what did you think of them getting 13 targets to AJ? Like, yeah, before I say anything, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, it felt like they were just forcing it his way at some points in time. Like they ran the little RPO slide, but they used AJ Brown instead of Dallas Goddard, and that one feels a little bit much. I'm fine with trying to funnel the ball his way, and I mean honestly, he should have dominated tonight. He just didn't really. Nobody really did offensively. So I'm fine with making a concerted effort to get AJ the ball. I just don't want to swing too far in that direction.
That pass interference, that honestly, that was one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
That was terrible.
I mean, it. In what world is that a penalty? I can't believe they called that. And it's a terrible play call. Like 3rd and 8, you can't like hitch to the sticks. I mean, that is going to be the most like blase, like predictable route that has very little chance. And honestly, when's
Hitch
the
to the
last time?
sticks. Hitch to the sticks on a night when you were one for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 for 9 passing over 10 air yards too. By the way,
And they got the hitch to the sticks. Though I'm literally think the last time they got that was against the Rams when AJ Brown just bossed the guy. That play does not work. It literally doesn't work. I'm like, there's people talking about is AJ Brown the same receiver? If you ask me after the first couple of games, I'd say no. He clearly looks hampered. He ramped up after that. I'll keep a close eye on it. If anything, I would say when he is kind of on a stop route and turning around, he doesn't explode out of that quite as well. To what extent can it be attributed to effort versus some kind of mobility restriction? I obviously can't say. Um, but yeah, like it was funny how they said, "Man, we got to move him around, try to get him involved in different ways." And then they like the first time they do a C gap insert to that split zone and then throw it off to the flats. And it's like I applaud the effort and I think that's a fine play, but you haven't done anything remotely like that the whole year. As soon as you line up like that, the alarm bells go off for the defense.
yeah.
Like the first time you line up for that, to me, it's a decoy. Like you have him insert block, or you just have him get some people's eyes on like a wheel route, and then you throw back the other direction. but to like do it for the first time and then be like, oh, here we go, over to AJ. It's just a little bit like they're lacking sophistication in their approach on offense. And this is coming from someone who thinks that like overall the play calling, I wasn't upset with it like as I have been in previous weeks. I thought it was fine. Um, it would have been a lot better had they made some catches, didn't
Yeah, the
blow some
drops were
terrible
terrible.
blocks.
Drops were terrible tonight.
Yeah, how many were there? Like at least three.
I know Devontae and Dallas Goddard each had two, if I remember correctly. Um, PFF only has each of them with one, but I would say that first one to Devontae was probably a drop, and there's another one to Goddard which drops are subjective, but I would say that they would have expected to catch most of those.
The one thing is the Eagles, they do have that speed out that's like available really often or sometimes fast to the flat with the running back. But Hertz is so paranoid that he's going to get knocked down by the edge that he always throws this little floater, which by the time like the if whether it's Saquon or whoever is turning around receiving and going upfield, it could have been like a nice gain like for a first down and then they get like 2 to 4 yards. Man, I feel like it would be such a boost to the offense if they could just like the Lions. They literally had some plays where they just came out and condensed, and they go hike, and they go directly over to Gibbs. It's perfectly in his stride, and he just runs. That when you have guys with the explosion of a Gibbs and of a Saquon, that's how you can weaponize them. Even without, you don't even need to execute. That's just out scheming them, out talenting them. But the Eagles, they like most of their plays. It seems like it requires elite execution for it to be successful, and they don't. They haven't executed at that level.
Yeah. The last thing I want to touch on offensively is I feel like it's the second week in a row that Nick Sirianni has majorly bungled an end of game situation. So last week, it was the run, run, run to burn the timeouts, and then they go for it on fourth down when they should have punted. This week, and I tweeted it when the Eagles got the ball back. I said, decide right now, are you trying to run their timeouts out or are you trying to pick up a first down? And like maybe you break a run and pick up a first down anyways, but like you've got to decide, don't do it halfway like you did last week. What do the Eagles do? Run, timeout. Then they get the 5-yard penalty, and from 3rd and 8, instead of running to burn the Lions' last timeout and then punting it with no timeouts, and they got to go score a touchdown with a running clock, which they haven't done, in like 12 possessions or whatever. They throw that pass, and they get bailed out by a super weak DPI call. If that play is officiated correctly, the Eagles are punting on fourth down, and the Lions have a timeout. And it's the second. This one wasn't as egregious as last week's, and obviously the result's different because of a bad flag. But it really is bothersome to me that it's the second week in a row that Nick Sirianni's made the exact same game management mistake at the end of the game. And it hasn't cost the Eagles either time. And part of me wishes almost that it would, so they would realize, hey, this is bad, because they just seem so like results driven instead of process. But it's bad process. It's the same mistake they made last week. Not as egregious, but still. Like, and again, it's not throwing the ball. It's throwing the ball after we committed to run and get rid of timeouts. And so that one really frustrated me. It'd be different if it was like, if it was on that 3rd and 3 and you ran like your little slide RPO where we could hand it off or have an easy flip, like it's not going to be an incompletion, but you threw a pass that has a high probability to be incomplete that would have resulted in a punt. So that was kind of frustrating to see as well. I think more people are going to talk about the tush push, but I was fine with that. What I had the issue with was that 3rd and 8 curl to the sticks.
Yeah, and you're going to invite a cornerback who's like, oh, I got to get in this run fit because if we give up a run, it's over. So they're playing tight anyway, and then you run a hitch to the sticks. So I feel like that was a terrible play call. And You know, I think there's like they still have yet to find their identity. I when they ran a few of those spread looks, I loved it, and it seemed
Yeah.
like they were fairly successful. And then they go into these double flex with Granson and Calcaterra out there, and they're really bad players. So I don't understand why they don't embrace it. Going back to the game management stuff, they're managing the game as if they have an elite offense and a terrible defense,
Yeah.
which is bizarre. And some of that seems like maybe it could be related to ego because you have the person calling the plays and the head coach orchestrating the offense, and they're saying, we're giving the keys to them and they're going to win us the game when they've been floundering all game. And how many times the Lions were 0 for 5 on fourth down? They handed them the ball in premium position. Like they don't no longer do they have this excuse when they get in the press conference on Wednesday going, we were backed up some of those plays, and that's why it kind of dictated the play calls. No, they got the ball at the 50, and then they're going back, back, back. So that is embarrassing. Like to me, the way the defense played, they easily should have put up close to 30.
At
So
one point, the defense forced a turnover on downs on 5 out of 6 possessions. That's insane. It started in the second quarter. Turnover on downs, touchdown. And then end of half, it was just the kneel down, so I don't count that one. And then 3 straight turnover on downs to start the second half for the Lions. Just incredible stuff by the defense.
so just to put a cap on that, last week the Packers came in and they were number 1 in EPA per pass. And they after playing the Eagles, they moved down to 6th. And guess who was the new number 1? The Detroit Lions. Now they're going to be moving down to probably 4th. So the Eagles, they're officially the pass defense assassin. And the way it's looking, I feel like it's going to hold up probably going forward. And that's a huge boon for this defense. They look good on the inside. The coaching job, it wasn't just the play calls and execution, although everything kind of falls into those buckets. The strategy of if they want to throw over the middle, guess what? We're going to cage rush and then defensive linemen hands up. I think 4 of the 5 passes that got knocked down, they were going to go close to in between the hashes. Like they were down the middle of the field. And then you just kind of play leverage on the outside. It works unbelievable, and they didn't take deep shots to really stress that defense. So it's going to be really cool to see the all 22 and see how well did they match routes. You got to imagine that Makuba and Blankenship had good games.
Yeah.
One thing I want to highlight, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on, is N'Kobe Dean running like a madman to cover Jameer Gibbs and Jamison Williams. It's and he's not turning the look or locate. He goes, "That's my man," and I'm running like Forrest Gump as fast as I possibly can to just disrupt things, and he did it. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. This might be the best game of N'Kobe Dean's career. Holy cow! Like to run with Gibbs on that vertical route, it was such good coverage. And then, yeah, picking up Jamison Williams on that crosser, he made some incredible plays in run defense. Just incredible game by N'Kobe Dean, who naturally has a 46.6 grade on PFF right now for the game, by the way, since we were already talking about them earlier. But
Well,
just,
because they probably give them credit for one of those deep crossers, and they only grade targeted snaps, so he probably got a minus 1.5 or something
they
for
said
one
he
of
was
those.
targeted 5 times and only allowed 1 reception, and then gave him a 47 coverage grade. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I thought N'Kobe Dean was awesome. Man, I wish that N'Kobe Dean hadn't got hurt last year because, I love Jahad Campbell. But if N'Kobe Dean hadn't got hurt last year, the Eagles wouldn't have drafted Jahad Campbell, and they would be re-signing N'Kobe Dean. And that's probably not going to happen now. N'Kobe Dean is probably, assuming he stays healthy, is probably going to go make a ton of money this offseason, and well deserved. I mean, we talked about last year how difficult that injury is to come off of, and he's just playing at an elite level. And I hate it for Jahad Campbell because I think Campbell was playing well before Dean came back, and I think people should be encouraged about Campbell long term. But it's you basically can't take N'Kobe off the field at this point. And I'm well on the record that I also don't think you can play Jahad Campbell at edge. So I kind of just feel like he's a backup linebacker at this point.
And he got absolutely roasted on that play that the Lions showed a million times on film, where it's fast to the flat from shotgun. He has Gibbs, and on film, Campbell, he always hesitates, and he's been slow to get to the outside like a half dozen times, and Gibbs just beats him on that play, goes for a big gain. So to what extent is it like, oh, now he doesn't have every down reps, he comes in there, he's a little rusty, all of a sudden it's the most electric back in the NFL, you hesitate for 1 second, it's too late.
Yeah.
So that's really unfortunate. So I actually do think that at this point Fangio's like, all right, our best chance to win is with Dean out there, and if that's at the expense of stunting his growth, so be it. But if
I
you
don't
look
think
at
it stunts his growth that much if you just make him a backup linebacker. I think it's a bigger issue if you start making him an edge.
well, yeah, but to the extent of like a player getting NFL experience, like
Yeah.
if he ended the season with 600 snaps or 300 snaps, that could make a significant difference to his development. Um, he probably is already at 300, but so yeah, I mean, and then talking about moonlighting at edge, absolutely not, because the guys they have in there are cooking. I think, Nolan Smith and Hunt kind of rotating. Phillips seems like he's on the field every single play. Um, that seems to be bearing dividends because those guys, when they're, you know, have their wind, they're actually making a much bigger impact. So you get that multiplicative effect of adding Phillips, everyone else gets better too. And I think it's something we got to start talking about is Jalen Carter is getting better.
Yes.
And he probably is like, dang, the estimates for that long-term extension went down 30 million. I better lock in. So I feel like, hopefully this remains true when I go watch the film, but on the broadcast it seemed like he was unbelievable. On the Jalen Phillips sack, the early one, Carter bowled the left guard over. It was unbelievable. Check out my Twitter if you haven't seen that. Um, but yeah, that's a big difference to this defense as well.
Yeah,
And Ojomo's playing better. All of them.
yeah, it's that one dominant force has a multiplicative effect, and it is interesting looking at the edge rushers snap counts. So Nolan Smith early in the year before he got hurt, 52, 44, 46. Since he came back from injury, he's played 19 and 22 snaps, which I'm assuming it's just ramp up. But 19 and 22 from Nolan Smith. Brandon Graham 10 and 8. So it just doesn't seem like Graham's probably going to play much. And then Jalix Hunt 43 and 36 the last 2 weeks, which is pretty on par with his whole season. Jalen Phillips 40 and 45. And so I'm curious to see like where those snaps, like, because presumably Nolan Smith is going to start to build back up towards 40 snaps or 35 snaps. And I guess some of those snaps are probably going to come from Jalix Hunt. I would imagine that's sort of how they balance it out. And it just mostly seems like Brandon Graham's going to be like a single digit to 10 snap type of guy.
Yeah, if you had to criticize anything about the defense, they had like 2 or 3 plays there where they just let Gibbs run absolutely wild, and then Williams.
Yeah.
Um, Quinion, it's one of those things where you really have to watch the film to fully say, but at first glance, it looks like this is one of his best games ever. Um,
Per next gen stats, Quinion Mitchell did not allow a reception on any of his 6 targets, tied for the most targets without allowing a reception in a game in the last 2 seasons. He played 39 snaps in coverage, which is tied for the third most coverage snaps by an outside cornerback in a game without allowing a reception. This was his third game of the season where he didn't allow a reception. He has allowed just a 42% completion percentage in coverage this season, the lowest by any player with 50-plus targets since 2018.
So you know what they're doing now? It seems like increasingly is they're saying, Quinyon, you're just nullifying whatever threats over here. We're rotating the coverage to flood the other side, um, and that's insulating Adoree Jackson. It's probably making Makuba's job easier. And if you look around the league, the Broncos are doing this as well,
Uh huh.
and they'll play these combination coverages where Sertan is all right. You've got everything here, whether it's a man match or zone, and then we're just rotating to the other side. And then when you have a pass rush behind that, you're winning the numbers game. You're helping in the leverage game. So everything comes together. These last 2 weeks have been very encouraging because they're against teams that have had a lot of success. And Jalen Phillips, he was working Penei Sewell to some degree. Like he had good reps against Penei Sewell. So that gives you hope that like, oh, this guy is going to be consistently good out there.
Yeah.
And against Green Bay, like there was guys running open. Let's be clear about this. And the defensive line disguised that. I thought the coverage probably, from what I could tell here, was better than it was against Green Bay. They did give up 3 of those passes over the intermediate middle, that's the bread and butter of Detroit. One of them that went for the touchdown, kind of where Adoree was tasked with doing a cross country, covering a guy running across the field. Now, someone
One of them
mentioned
was a
that
B. One of them was a B gap release too, which is such a cool way. Cooper DeJean got run into a linebacker. Like that's such a cool way to scheme plays. I would love to see the Eagles do that.
they got beat by the Rams on a insert play.
Yep.
It
It's
turned
so
into
tough,
like a
especially
corner
if you're
route.
willing to use those guys to crack block. It makes it so difficult to tell play action or not.
And like it's funny that the Eagles have now, I think 2 out of the last 3 weeks they've tried an insert play, but it's just random. Like you just all of a sudden you go, here we just rolling out this specialty play. That's the sense like a lot, we get all these questions about how would you characterize the offense? How do you fix the offense? And of course, there at times there's execution. A lot of times run blocking has been really suspect. Uh, Not having good answers versus zone and stuff like that. But I think it's one of these things where I guess I would ask you like, do you think this is what the Eagles offense is and we're just going to have to live with it? Do you think we're going to see, you know, some cohesive attack plan? Because I've described it as it's like a grab bag. It's like, okay, here's all my plays. I'm just going to reach in and grab one. Do you get that sense like about play sequencing? Do you have any thoughts about that in general?
I feel like there's just never been much cohesiveness to like a game plan beyond the original scripted plays for the Eagles this season. It just very much feels like a grab bag of concepts that aren't sequenced with one another. I have a hard time seeing that changing because we're so far in at this point. Now, that said, I do think the offense, I will continue, especially with the defense playing this way, to view the Eagles as serious contenders because, I mean, one, it's no fun to just be like, well, this is going to flame out in the playoffs because the offense stinks. That's no fun, which isn't good analysis, but I want to have fun. But also, like, so many of the answers to what they need to do feel so simple to me that I just feel like at some point they're eventually going to get there, right? Like, get an empty more because it works. I mean, they were in empty, like, I think they were in empty like 4 times this game. They had Saquon on a deep route that was just an overthrow. They had a slant to AJ Brown, and they either had 2 or 3 good Hurts runs out of empty. So it was 4 or 5 plays, all of them successful. One not executed, so like 80% success rate because Hurts overthrows him, but it's a touchdown if you put it on the money, which he probably does if it's not windy. So like everything out of empty works. So I'm like, they're eventually gonna start going into more empty. Surely they are going to uh, get involved in the RPO game. Surely they're going to start to run Saquon outside the tackles with pullers more. Like they're going to use the read option game. Like a lot of those things just feel like really easy. It's not like a fundamental shift. I'm not saying like what this offense needs to do to get better is put on the McVay film and get under center and run insert play action, crossing routes. Like I don't think you have to radically shift the offense for it to take a leap. I just think it's some of those minor things that they need to switch up. And so I will continue to believe that at any given moment they can flip that switch, despite the fact we haven't seen a lot of evidence for it, just because I think it's so simple to do. And, I'm going to hope they figure that out down the stretch.
If they don't throw to Calcaterra, why is he out there? Like, it would be much more fruitful to put a guy like Latu out there. It would be much more fruitful to do two backs. Like, on the play that the fullback dive that failed with Saquon, you know what Saquon would be good at? Lead blocking with a lot of momentum. You could just run a toss play or stretch play to Bigsby with Saquon lead blocking. I think that would work.
Yeah.
Um, you could fake that and then you hand it on a fullback coming across to Saquon. So, yeah, like one of the things is if you put something on film that's a little unorthodox for you, the next time you come out in that formation, you should be doing something to scaffold off of that first play, not just going, oh, the same unscouted look twice in a row. So I just can't see the justification for that. But like I said, I didn't think the play calling was horrible. The one that really got me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is they're cross midfield, it's second and floor, and then they call that Yankee, like the
Oh.
post and the cross, max protect, and the world caves in on Hurts, and then he just takes the sack when they couldn't take a sack.
Yeah. Yeah. A, can't take a sack there. B, it's easier to not take a sack if you have somewhere to go and your center just whiffs on the defensive tackle, which would be rolling out to your right, except, oh, we asked our third tight end to solo block Aiden Hutchinson. Just like, I mean, you remember how much crap Eagles fans gave Kyle Shanahan about blocking Hassan Reddick with a backup tight end when Brock Purdy got injured in that NFC playoff game a few years ago. Like, that was that level of stupid. And there's legitimate reasons to block a defensive end, particularly if you're like booting away from them. That would be fine. But yeah, that was just I hated everything about that. I would still like for Hurts to not take a sack there, but yeah, the execution up front and the design there did not help at all.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they insist. Like Fred Johnson comes in, and then you have him and Steen on the right side, and it seemed like they're in like more than 50% of the runs to that side, and then they're both of those guys are getting blown up. Then they come out in that stupid pistol play and run stretch, and just like the last time twice against the Broncos, Jurgens got bench pressed in the backfield.
Yeah.
Like that does not work. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
They're horrible in pistol. Pistol does not work. It's like, the concept of pistol is great. Everything other than that is horrible. So I would throw that in the bin. Asking you, like, what, obviously, other than just executing better, and I don't even know, like, what we could suggest for that to happen, what would you like to see? I know you talked about how much you love empty. Is there another, like, one or two things that you're like, okay, the Eagles can hang their hat on this going forward? I like to see it.
Yeah. Obviously, empty is always my first answer with that, but I already talked about that. I would like more three-man route concepts because the primary issue the Eagles have is facing zone, and it's hard to beat zone from these 2-by-2 looks with nothing crossing the field. And so you either need to get three receivers on the same side to start with, or go 2-by-2 but have some crossing routes to really flood zones. And so three-man route concepts, pin pull run concepts I really like. I think the Eagles are good at those. Now obviously the offensive line is pretty banged up, and so you know I don't know how viable that is necessarily, but um, and then I feel like the Eagles have been so good. Like AJ Brown particularly has been so good on like those deep comeback routes over the course of his career, where especially when you end up in single high, that you can run that 15 yards and then stick that foot in the ground, and he thinks you're going vertical and the ball's already out. Like I feel like Jalen has thrown that with a lot of anticipation over the last couple of years, and that just seems totally gone in favor of hitches and curls this year. So I would like to see him try to get back to that. But yeah, the big things for me are empty and three-man route concepts.
Yeah, and frankly, as I look across the league, I don't think you see a lot of like just go on the outside and run a comeback for whatever reason. Because I think it's a good play, especially with the guys that they have, and I think the hitch is bad. And I can't imagine that there's something that's like would limit him from running a deep comeback that isn't also true about a hitch. So, a hitch, there's really two main purposes for it. One is in a like against the zone defense where maybe they're not matching quite as quickly off of the line, you have an opportunity that between two zones you can hit them right as they're turning around. Generally the ball is out like as they're turning around, and then by the time they fully turn around it's on them. Well, the Eagles, they don't have that. They don't kind of throw hitches right on the break. The other one is you're trying to suck a zone defender down so that you can hit behind him. But the Eagles don't throw to the intermediate deep part of the field like the we saw with the Lions on a couple of those digs and crossers. So ultimately, a hitch is not a very good route for the Eagles to run, but they seem to run quite a bit of them. And especially when you run plays where you're running like three hitches. Hank is one of those plays that has three hitches on it of varying depths. So, the hitch has merit. It may have more completions than any other pass over the last couple of years, but it's not conducive to success for this team. And the funny thing is, crossers would suit their skill sets, but they don't seem to run them. I think Deniz did a study on this and saw that if you look at the top two receivers for each team, the percentage of routes that included them crossing the field, the Eagles was the lowest. So, yeah, if you want to actually be able to attack zones, I think you're going to have more crossers, yeah, three-man combinations, and throw on the break.
Yeah. Also, just get Grant Calcaterra off the field. I looked it up here. He has played 236 offensive snaps this year, and he has 40 receiving yards. He's been targeted on 2% of his plays he's been on the field.
So he's a blocker. He's literally a blocker.
He's a blocker and a bad one. Yeah.
Though, yeah, and I'm not even being hyperbolic when I say I've never seen a tight end who's as bad as blocking as him. And if people remember, he was like a quasi receiver in college. He's a quasi receiver in the NFL too. It's actually comical to like put him in line and have him try to block defensive ends for 2 seasons. He can't do it. It's a bit, yeah, it really hurts this team. And they were starting to replace some of those snaps with Fred Johnson in the jumbo, but then Lane goes out, so that has that domino effect where jumbo pretty much goes away. And when jumbo goes away, that means you're getting Granson and Calcaterra on the field. They're really bad players, and it's funny because like they had some 12 personnel passes that were successful. Maybe they turned into drops, but like ultimately the play was a good play call. but they can't run out of it at all. And I can't. You don't want to say, okay, yeah, we're hanging our hat on throwing out of 12 personnel when one of the guys has 4 catches all year. Is that what you said? Four
Yeah,
catches?
yeah,
Yeah.
4 catches. Like
So
just
yeah,
just put Fred Johnson in at your as a sixth offensive line and throw him the ball 4 times if that's what you want to do. It'll probably be the same result.
yeah. So you can run 11 personnel and add a offensive lineman. Then you get all of your best players on the field. You still have the ability to run because even though you have 3 receivers, you have an extra offensive line. But then you have one of the guys running the routes is a Jahan Dotson compared to Grant Calcaterra. So yeah, I mean, if you're trying to, hopefully Lane gets healthy because I would just pretty much replace the 12 and 13 personnel with the one where you add an offensive lineman. So the
Yeah,
13 would become 12 with an extra offensive lineman, and then you can run 11 with the 6 offensive linemen.
yeah, yeah. I agree 100%. I feel we spent a lot more time on the offense than we have on the defense, but I think it's out of a desire to troubleshoot the offense. We talked about some of the standout performances on defense as well, and with a lot of the like secondary guys, it is kind of hard until we get to the film. But any other impressions or takeaways that you have that you wanted to throw out about the defense before we start wrapping up here?
I mean, Adoree Jackson, yeah, I think he played well. There was 2 plays that he kind of got exposed on. One with Gibbs in the open field, and then the crosser touchdown. But I think you can live with him out there. Um, I'd say he's probably the best option. There's a reason that Bennett is not getting in there. When he did in his limited snaps, he didn't seem to have a good handle of the scheme. I do think he's probably the most physically talented guy, but they probably just value reliability, especially because you have Bennett and Makuba to one side. You probably are not trusting that like in a big game. So yeah, he has his warts, but there's a little bit of a hey, let's not throw it the second best corner in the NFL. We'll go at Adoree, but oh, it's Adoree with help, and he knows the ball might be coming his way. So sometimes inviting targets to a certain direction, as long as you only have like one kink in the armor, it's not a bad thing because you're able to recruit more resources into that direction. Um, and like the job they did on St. Brown was unbelievable. Most of his like production, it's on inbreakers, it's on choice routes, and Goff, he was so skittish from the pass rush and the knockdowns over the middle that you could see on those that like prime vision view, they had angle routes over the middle. They had little slants, but it was tight windows and the pockets collapsing and into the wind, and he just wasn't able to pull the trigger. So yeah, I mean credit that defense. And now I feel like they've got some swagger too. So
Yeah,
they're gonna be more confident and they can just keep building on that. And it's not
and they're
it's
going to
not
need it
dissimilar
because
to what they saw.
they face
Go ahead.
another top 5 passing offense next week.
Yeah. Now, really, this is going to be where push comes to shove for the offense because against that miserable Giants defense, they were able to finally have success and they ran a lot of that gap scheme, the same side tosses, and so on. And the Cowboys defense is unbelievably horrible. So if they don't have a good offensive game, that's a big indictment. So really anything you want to do, the Cowboys, if once guys get running into the second level, they're just running free. They're like a slow defense. They don't seem to tackle particularly well. They have coverage busts. Even when they're in good position, they commit flags. They give up bombs. So there's going to be opportunities to attack this, and then maybe the offense can start to build a little confidence.
13-10 game incoming.
Yeah, it would be unbelievable. Now, we saw last time, CeeDee Lamb, when he got against Adoree, it was game over. That's going to remain true. So I expect them to help him out significantly. That's going to funnel targets over to Pickens. I'm just assuming I'm up to date on injury that all their guys are still playing, but you know, that is one matchup that's tough. Like, I feel like Pickens is one guy who would maybe give Quinyon. It's not like he's gonna dust him, but that's a tough matchup. And I
Yeah.
think they're probably gonna funnel a lot of targets that way. Dak loves to throw one-on-one balls down the sideline, so I think we're gonna see some fireworks next week.
Yeah. Well, we will have a 1 day rest advantage on the Cowboys who play tomorrow night on Monday Night Football. But Eric, before we get out of here, let's do our player of the games, and I'll give you first crack at it here. So, who are you naming your player of the game for this one?
I'll say, I mean, Quinyon. I think they've got two really good receivers of completely different skill sets. Like you mentioned, no one had been in that many coverage snaps and not give up a reception all year. It seemed like he was in the hip pocket all night. It wasn't like lucky plays. He was
Mm-hmm.
completely smothering the receivers. And it's that bonus effect of now everyone else can divert their attention to other threats. So that frees up everyone. So yeah, Quinyon is probably the player of the season for that defense.
Yeah, that's a great pick. There's so many guys you could go with defensively. Brett Eclipse with a good shout out here. Jake Elliott, honorable mention for player of the game. Yeah, that field goal that he hit in the wind to put the Eagles up 2 scores was huge. I'm going to go with N'Kobe Dean. I can't say that he played, that was the best game of his career and not give him a shout out for player of the game. So I'll go N'Kobe Dean. Made a couple of big splash plays, had that nice sack. But again, there's so many you could go. You could legitimately go with Jalen Phillips, Jalen Carter. You could go with Moro
Davis.
Ojomo. You could go with Jordan Davis. Like you could the entire defensive line. So one thing is for absolute sure is that it's definitely a defensive player. Like the top 10 players of the game all come from the defense this time around.
So, just for reference, the Cowboys, they're ranked roughly fifth in the NFL in offense, kind of right in the zone with Detroit and Green Bay, who we obviously saw we had success with. But they are 31st in defense, just above the Bengals, below the Commanders and Giants. So, talk about a get right game. I'll say if they don't have success against the Cowboys, that's officially DEFCON level like 2. Um, so, yeah, I think they're gonna have to play good because I think the Cowboys probably will put up a couple touchdowns. So I don't think this is a game where they just roll over them, and it doesn't seem like the Eagles do that anyway to any team.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that is going to about do it for our post game show. Thank you to everybody who is still hanging with us at 12:40 in the morning on a. I was about to say on a Sunday night. That doesn't make any sense. 12:40 in the morning on a Monday. Appreciate you guys tuning in after that game. Make sure you're subscribed to the Eagles Pinpool Network. There's going to be a lot of content coming your way this week. All kinds of game breakdowns, previews of the Cowboys game. If you are not in our Patreon, consider coming to join us there at patreon.com/Eagles Film Room. You get lots of exclusive content from Johnny and Eric and I. I should have my past game review up tomorrow afternoon. Eric will have a player spotlight later this week. Johnny will have a preview of the Cowboys. Eric will have a written piece as well. All kinds of stuff coming your way on Patreon, so you can come support us there if you want to. Otherwise, 5-star ratings and reviews really help with the podcast feed, and we will catch up with you guys later this week. So thanks for joining us. Eagles get the win, move to 8-2, ahead of a huge Sunday afternoon matchup next week against the Cowboys. So hopefully we can win that one and get out to 9-2.
One last thing. So I'm seeing something go around on Twitter. They're calling him "Can't Block a Terra."
Love it. I love it. That is a very apt nickname, and we needed to lead off the show with that, but I'm not clever enough to come up with that. So there you go, guys. We will catch you guys next